Hello, this is Teach Me and Learn Again, and today we will be shading. Now, you may recognize this cat as the video from before, the line art, or the coloring that we did before with the divided tabby. So, we are going to do the next step, which is shading. Now, I have three ways to shade. Cell shading, which is going to be the best transfer to another program. I'm using Photoshop right now, but if you are using a non-layer based program such as MS Paint, cell shading is going to be just about the only way you can shade. It's going to be the easiest, but it's also going to be very tedious. And I'm going to explain how to do it the best that I can. The other way is gradual shading or gradient shading, whichever one you prefer. And this one is going to best be used for either traditional artwork or a layer-based program such as Photoshop. So that that'll work. And the last one is going to be more of a colored multiply shading. I'm not entirely sure if that's the correct term, but it's going to be messing with the layer types. So we're going to start off with cell shading. And for this, you want to make sure you have not combined your line layer and your color layer. See, if I were to take the line layer away, you just see the color, and if I were to take the color, you just see the line. That's going to be the best thing for you. If you have MS Paint, sorry, that's going to suck. Good luck. You can do this way without them being separated, but it's going to be a lot more difficult because the markings are in the way of the fill bucket, so it's going to affect that. So we're going to start with that. Now we're going to make a layer in between the color and the line art layer. So we have the color here, and the line art here, and we're going to make it in between, and we're going to turn off the color layer. You're not getting rid of it, you're just clicking the visibility and you're making it go away. Now you're going to want to pick a color black, and you're still going to want your pencil tool. We're not going to use anything else but the pencil tool for this shading. Just the pencil and the fill bucket. We're going to do one light source, and that's going to be coming from here. Because I personally think that's the easiest light source to do, so we're going to start with that. We're going to start with the face, because that's the most difficult to do. You're going to see what I'm doing is I'm just going to draw a series of lines casting what is going to be in the light. So we're going to do that. And it's going to be very detail orientated depending on how well you want, how detail orientated you are. You don't have to go all out for self shading. It's just something very stylized, and that's basically the shadows for the face, and then you're just going to fill it in with the fill bucket. And that's the shadows for the face. This will look better, I promise, once we get the color back. Right now it's just going to look black and white and a little weird. I have gotten very used to shading, so if you need to move and remember where the arrow is and work from there, that's fine. Don't feel bad about that. We're going to shade behind the head, like so. And then we're going to create something not adjoined to the shadow from the mouth. You want to start it from where the jaw starts. And for me, that's right here. If it starts over here, you want to do it over down from there. Just varying from where your head starts. And so you're going to basically just draw it down and just color that in. That's probably one of the simpler things you're going to do. And then if you have any fluff, shade in front of it, not to the inside, not to the outside. And then anywhere where lines meet like that, just kind of color it in. Then you're going to do shadow on the shoulder, which you're going to start from the top of the shoulder and bring it down like that, and then you're going to connect it and color it in. And that's the shadow from the shoulder. And there are two ways you can color the rear feet, this one and this one. The easiest way is just to fill it in. And so that's what I'm going to do. If you wanted to, you can get into detail and color this and just do that and have the light casting on the back leg. And that is just preference. Whatever you want to do is fine. It's a stylized choice. Now, before we get into the legs, we're going to do the underbelly, which we're going to start here, and we're going to go up a little bit. Not a whole lot. You're not going to bring it all the way up. You're just going to go up a little bit, and then you're going to curve inward and then up. And you're going to kind of mimic the shape, and once you get to this line right here, you want to start going flat again, or curving down again. And then you're going to fill that in. And then you can color this part here if you want. If you have a very masculine character, a very strong shouldered character, where their shoulders come out, then you can color that in. But I am not going to do that. I'm going to have just a basic build. So we're going to do that. The back shading is fine. What you have here, you're not going to add anything else to this section. Now we're going to go to this portion because you have a muscle here. You have a muscle here. And so that comes out while this shades downward because it's sloping down. So you're going to shade from about here, down from where your shoulder starts, downward, and kind of curve it. And then varying on how strong your light source is, it could end here, but have more highlight here. This is the highlighted portion. And then you just color it in and you have your shading there. This isn't going to be a too detail shading. This is just a basic cell shading, which is what cell shading is. You don't have to get too into it. This is just the easy way to do it. Now you're going to not start from the top here. You're going to start a little bit down about here where the lower body meets. And you're just going to go down and up. And then you're going to see where this meets. You're going to make those connect. And then you're going to make it connect downward. Just a straight line. And then that is shaded. I'm going to make this a little smaller though because it's angling downward, but if it were more over here, if the light was more over here, you would keep it the way it is. So we're going to shade that. And then the underside of the tail is very easy. You just draw one line and you're good. So since the brightness is right here, we're going to put this down and curve up. Like that. And color that in. And your cell shading is finished. You add the color and then you mess with the transparency. Now, if you were in MS Paint, you would not have used black. You would have had to take the color of where you were. Say if I were shading this part, if I were shading this, the color, I would need a darker brown. And then I would have to do the same shading, colored it in, and then when I got to a stripe, I would have had to get a darker color, change the color, and then brought it up. And you see why it's very difficult, because you have to switch between this you have to switch between this, and then you have to go back to this, and shade it in that way, and color it in, and it'll have the same effect. It just takes longer, and so we're not going to deal with that. So, with what we have now, you're just going to mess with the transparency and bring it down until you get it to where you like it. The darker the shadow, the brighter the light. I know that seems a little counterproductive, but the darker the shadow, the brighter the light. See, if it were like this, he would be standing basically in front of a flashlight. But if it were more like this, that's almost unheard of, not to be like that. I usually kick it to about 30 or a little lower. Anything lower than 20 or somewhere in between like 10 and 20, you can almost barely see it. And so I like to keep it at about 30. And then you can leave it like this, which is what I usually do, or you can blur it. Now, if you have a blur tool, you can use that and just blur it a little bit. Don't do too much or you'll take away the effect. Or if you have Photoshop or some pre-planned, some pre-programmed filters, you can blur them that way. Again, not too much, just to kind of soften the edges. And that's how you do cell shading. Now the next part I'm going to do is probably the easiest one. I'm going to change from pencil to brush. And I'm going to make sure I have a soft brush, which is these right here. They're soft instead of perfect circles, they're soft. And I'm probably going to do something small, maybe 14 or 12. I'm going to go with 12. This one is definitely more towards the advanced programs. You can get something on for free online, like Pencil or GIMP, and they will have these tools, or you can have Photoshop, like I have, or Psy, or anything like that, and this will work. Now, again, you're going to want it on a different layer. This one, you do not have to get rid of the color. We're going to move the shadow, so we're going to bring it from up here, so it's angling from down and coming up, so this is going to be the brightest part right here. So we're going to start coloring. And basically we're going to start here and just do the ears. Again, we're going to start with the face. And you're just going to basically paint the shadow on. And you're going to highlight some of the same areas, and you want to make sure you get underneath the jaw very well. And you're going to basically not highlight anything that's, not shadow anything that's facing the light. So right here, we're not going to shadow anything right there, because it's in the brightest part, or anything right there. We are going to shadow the eye, right back like that. And we're going to definitely shadow back here a lot. We want to make sure this is very neat though, because once we deal with this, it'll be very out of lines. And it's similar the way you color it to the cell shading, but there's going to be different effects that we do, and you want to make sure you get all the places that aren't going to be highlighted. And feet are a little hard to highlight. Shadow, not highlight here, shadow here. Yeah, we'll do that, and then we're going to shadow just this part right here. And I'm going to actually have to work with that a little bit better. There we go. And a little bit right there. And you can clearly see where all the light is coming from if you were to look at this. And you're going to get better at this as you do it. It's something that you just have to practice, that you get good at. And if it helps you, you can draw the shapes that you like, that the light is hitting it as. And for an angle like this, most of the cat is going to be, or most of anything. This doesn't have to be a cat. This can be anything. This is just general shading. You want to definitely mess around with the lighting that you like and how to shadow, and you can come up with your own methods, of course. Now this is not done. We're going to first take down the occupancy. This one I usually keep pretty high, so about 50, and then we're going to blur it. You can either do this with your blur tool or with a pre-programmed filter, which is what I'm using now, and you can see the different effect. It's very soft, it's very soft focus would probably be the best word for this, and you can see it's like a soft light, which is what we have here. And you can definitely see the different effect from the cell shading. And we're going to get into the last last way to shade. And there are two different ways to do this last shading. One is the same way we did. This is called multiply shading, or what I call it, multiply shading. And you can either do it the way we did the self-shading with the pencil and going in and coloring every individual piece, or we can do the brush method, which we just did. Again, will get you a different effect. I'm only going to do the brush one because it'll be faster, but it'll get you a similar look, but one will just be softer than the other and more rounded. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a layer, and if you have Photoshop 7, the thing you're going to do is going to change the layer from normal to multiply. And where this is depends on the layering program you have. This one is solely for a layering program. This will not work on Paint. Paint does not have a multiply layer that I am aware of. So you are going to change the layer to multiply. And we're going to change the color. You cannot use black and you cannot use white. And grays generally don't work well. You want a colored light. So say our cat is going to be at a sunset. So I want something orangey, pinkishy, yellowy. We're going to do orangey, tanny color. So we're going to pick that color right here. And you're going to watch, okay? So if I do, see, it's not orange, it's not yellow, it's not brown, it's kind of a shadow of it. And that's how you do a colored shadow, which is what this is. If I were to pick black, it would just be black. There's nothing to it. And if I were to pick white, it's just white. There's nothing there if you do white. So you definitely want to not pick one of those colors. So we're going to do the orange. And we're going to have the light coming from here. Just for something odd. So right here is going to be the brightest part. This circle is going to be the brightest part, and it's going to have the least amount of shadow, but the strongest shadow. So we're going to basically do what we did before, same way, just to kind of changing it up a bit, and shading it as we go. You will develop your own style of shading as you draw. You might like the more angled of the self-shading over the softness of the brush or anything like that. Just remember you can do more than one. I usually do the self-shading on multiply is what I do when I want something colored. If I'm doing something very basic, I will just do the self-shading on black, which is what I showed you just a moment ago. So we have this, and we have a little bit of the underbelly not shaded. We have a little bit over here that's not shaded. And then we're going to have a pretty decent amount here that's not shaded. And we're going to leave this shoulder here because it's popping out, so it's not going to be shaded as much. And then most of the hair is going to be shaded, as well as the front part of the ear. And most of the face, actually. But we're going to leave this portion right here unshaded, because there's a cheek, it pops out like on the human face. It's just covered by fur and a lot smoother. So then we're going to do the chest. And then the front part of the foot. And then we have that. And we're going to, you can either leave it like this, or you can blur it, which is what I usually do. And I'll probably not blur it as much as I do a lot of times. And then I can go and touch up some places that I want to be softer, like the face. And you can soften it right around in some places. I'm going to soften it more here, because that's where the lighting is. And you can see I'm doing it very feathered, because it's fur. And you don't want it so shapy, because it's not like a cylinder or a sphere or anything like that, it's fur. And we can use the same technique that we used when doing the point tabby, not the point tabby, just the point coloring, which is where you feather it out and then feather it in. and that'll soften it up for you. And that concludes our shadowing. If you use multiply, you will want, when you merge it together, if you merge it together, I usually merge my pieces, you have to right click and click merge visible, and not merge down. If you merge down most of the time, it messes up the layering, which is not good. You don't want that because it'll change it. So, I hope this helps. This is the last of the installments for cats, I guess you could say. I have shown you the basics of how to draw a canine, how to draw a feline, how to color a tabby, and how to shade. So if there's anything else you want to see, let me know. This will not be my last how-to video. This is just the last of the ones I have planned. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment below. Those really help. I love hearing comments of how you tried to draw something and it came out a lot better than when you've tried before. And just remember, these are guidelines. These are not rules of how you have to do something. These are just the easier ways I found to do things, and I hope it really helps you out. Thanks for watching.